can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, so today's video, we're going to be talking about Avengers Twilight number 6, written by Chip Zdarsky, with art by Daniel Acuna. But before we actually get into today's video, I want to take a moment to tell you about a little Kickstarter that's going to be coming up that if you are as huge a fan of Darkwing Duck as I am, as a kid growing up watching this every single day after school, Darkwing Duck just kind of became a huge part of my life. It was just one of those things, you just accepted it. Darkwing Duck was awesome. I didn't even really appreciate Darkwing Duck for what it was at the time, but I loved it so much it didn't matter. And as I've become an adult, I look at it in an entirely different light, under a completely different lens, and enjoy it for the parody that it always was. But that said, the cartoon wasn't the only amazing thing about Darkwing Duck that was going on at the time. There was also a comic book series, and that comic book series is being brought back in a graphic novel format by Dynamite Comics. This Kickstarter is going to be going towards reprinting all of those classic Darkwing Duck comics, like Disney Comics Darkwing Duck, as well as Marvel's Disney Afternoon number 1 through 10, which in that particular case will only be for the Darkwing Duck specific stories. But they'll also be putting together a facsimile edition of the original Darkwing Duck number 1 from 1992, as well as both the Justice Ducks and Nega Duck series. You'll be able to get these collected as graphic novels and in multiple different formats, from trade paperbacks to hardcover collections. You'll even be able to get foil covers and all that cool stuff. This is going to be going live on June the 4th, so by the time you see this video, it'll actually be a lot closer to the Kickstarter's launch, but I will have a link in the description as well as a pinned comment below that you can go check that out. And depending on when you find this, you can either go ahead and back it right then and there, or you can set your notifications so that Kickstarter reminds you when this goes live. Until then, let's get dangerous and get back into the video. So this is the final issue of Avengers Twilight, and it goes out with what I feel is a pretty big bang, but also like with some really good heartfelt moments. If you have not been keeping up with Avengers Twilight, I don't really know what else to tell you other than this is the Kingdom Come for our, current modern day comics. This is the Watchmen for our current modern day comics. And it does something that I feel both of those stories do particularly well, and it's go out with what I feel is a respectable ending, something that feels earned by the time you get to the end of it. And while I definitely think that there are a couple of aspects of it that wrap up just a little bit too nice and neat for my taste, they do end in a way that feels real. To get back to this, we know that Red Skull is out. He is loud and proud with his evil and his fascism and shenanigans. And I mean, let's not stand on ceremony with this. It ends the only way that it really can, and not necessarily just so much with the Red Skull's defeat, but also just with the simple notion of how Red Skull is exposed for his lies. And it's something that kind of speaks to the real world. This entire story speaks to the real world and how America has kind of been turned upside down by grifters and confidence tricksters, as old-timey parlance might refer to them. Basically, you are looking at a situation where the only way that the American people are going to believe that there is an actual Nazi trying to take over the United States and perform a coup is if you can catch it on tape. And it's one of those things that I almost kind of wondered if Chip was going to take it a step further in the narrative, considering the fact that in our own real world, we literally had on January 6, 2021, we literally had a coup take place at the Capitol. And the only reason I think as many people believe that that coup actually happened is because it was caught on tape. Like, I believe if it was not caught on tape, there would be many people who would be trying to deny that it ever actually happened. And the funny thing about it is, even with that video evidence, even with that surveillance evidence, there are still people who think that the coup was not a coup. Like, it was an unsuccessful coup. And that's just really even talking about the insurrection part of it. We're not even talking about the actual coup itself. But the fact that people were literally caught on surveillance, caught on audio tape, caught on video, you had to have this entire body of evidence laid out for people to even believe that it happened. And even then, there are still people who don't believe it happened. And that's why I was kind of wondering where Chip was going to go with this. But no, the people they believe Red Skull is who he says he is once they see him caught on tape admitting, basically giving the whole story away as far as to what he is trying to do, the fact that he is intentionally trying to take the American flag and turn it into a symbol of fascism. Now, while all this is going on, you also can't discount the fact that he has already unleashed a Hulk. One that he can control at least as much as you can control a Hulk. And on top of that, we also have James Stark, who has been aiding him and helping him actively fight back against his father, Tony Stark, as well as the rest of the Avengers. And when I talked about how I felt that, you know, some things wrapped up just a little bit too nice and neat, there was that portion there where I felt like, you know, the return of Janet Van Dyne was something I was not expecting, at least not in the way that it happened. The fact that Janet had basically been lying in wait the entire time, hidden inside of a ring that was given to James when he was a kid, after, Tony's supposed passing away and Janet's supposed disappearance. That part was cool. I actually thought that part was actually pretty neat. Because it kind of had been implied that she was, in fact, actually dead, but she was not. It was all a setup to get people to just kind of take the heat off of her and put it all on Tony. But now that she's back, she's able to help aid in the fight, but also get James to see that he hadn't lost everything. It is kind of funny, though, the fact that he is, for the most part, buying what Red Skull is selling, but at the same time, not like, we talked about this, like, I think a couple of videos ago regarding Avengers Twilight, maybe for like number 4 or 5, where it seemed like he wasn't necessarily okay with what was going on. Like, he seemed to not really, be able to process the fact that the Red Skull had been raising him the entire time, but he was still just going along with it. And it seems like maybe there was a little bit more there. If there actually was a little bit more to that, it wasn't expressed in an outward way. I feel like it was something you kind of had to just kind of go along with it in order to see. But yeah, he does turn back to the babyface side of things once his mom comes back. And I thought that was probably like the one part was kind of like, I don't know about that. I will say, though, I appreciate the fact that he doesn't necessarily get away scot-free as far as, like, not having we don't really know what comeuppance he has, because at the end of the day, he does make an attempt to sacrifice himself by stopping Red Skull from unleashing a self-destruct nuke in his armor that would probably do about as much damage as the nuke he was already trying to drop. And in that, yes, an attempted self-sacrifice, I was kind of okay with that. But then, like, they kind of did the whole thing where Tony's like, nope, not gonna let you do it, and I'm gonna take the L for you and blow myself up. You get to carry on and make amends for your mistakes. That part I was okay with, but it was just one of those deals where I was like, man, at the end of it all, when you get back to it, and at the end of the story, Bullseye and Ms. Marvel, they're trying to help him rebuild Avengers Mansion, something that he was kind of taking on solely by himself as a kind of means to make up for what he had done. That part I was kind of like, I kind of almost wanted him to suffer some kind of consequences, because he was really brazen about his attitude towards the Avengers. And granted, while he was lied to and manipulated, I still feel like there should be just a little bit more consequence for him. But I guess we'll have to settle for him losing his dad, which that does actually suck. Maybe I'm a heartless bastard, I don't know. I have been called that before. But yeah, that's kind of the one part I was like, wrapped up just a little bit too nice and neat. But it is nice to see that in this universe, while technically we're done with this universe, at least for now, who's to say we won't come back to this at some point later, but I do like the fact that at the very least, a new generation of Avengers have been set up with Ms. Marvel and Bullseye, and now the new Iron Man. So that is actually a nice little thing. The thing that's really sad, but also kind of heartwarming at the same time, is what happens with Hulk. Hulk is, for all intents and purposes, he has to be taken out. There is no saving him. Thor recognizes this. This is something that I feel like very rarely does anyone actually recognize in comics. Yeah, sure, there's people who realize, yeah, we're probably gonna have to unalive the Hulk. But in very few instances does anyone ever actually do it. And in this particular instance, Thor is the one to do it, but it's done in a way that, yeah, I guess technically kind of makes sense a little bit. Like, Thor just basically takes him down, using all of his power, takes him to the bottom of the ocean, putting his hammer on his chest to keep him held down, so that he will drown the Hulk to death. And it sounds kind of weird. You would think that the Hulk would probably be able to get away from him in this one, but this is also, you kind of have to just kind of take this as it is. Thor is using all of his power. He's not holding back. He's not fighting a friend. He's trying to end an enemy who he once knew as a friend, and also recognizing that Banner is still in there and wants to be unalived. So there's that as well. Like I said, this part was actually pretty heartwarming because we know that by the time you get to the end of this, Thor has made moves behind the scenes to ensure that when Tony Stark and Bruce Banner die, they wind up in Valhalla. So that way he can still be close to his friends. And yeah, I thought that part was pretty cool. It was very heartwarming because, it was like, oh man, Bruce gets to have somewhat of a happy ending. Tony gets to finally have a little bit of a reprieve, even though it's in death. And you can tell that some of these things are weighing heavy on Thor because while yes, he's happy that they get to have that ending, Thor doesn't get to have that ending because he must persist. But you also get a little bit of happiness from Loki. The fact that Loki in this universe, while technically Loki has been an on and off again good guy, and more lately on good guy than off, he was instrumental in ensuring the Avengers assemble once more, having been the one that made certain that Luke Cage's defenders were able to figure out a way to contact Thor. So that, there's lots of really cool stuff that kind of explain why certain characters show up when they did. They kind of give you this nice little epilogue to show you like Captain America's riding off into the sunset. He's no longer capable of any of the Captain America-esque feats that he has been able to do up to this point, but he is still alive. He survives his fight with Red Skull, and he's able to ride off into the sunset with his wife, Dr. Rosa. So, it kind of reminds you that, yes, they have patched things up. And while Janet is back, but Tony is gone, she gets to catch up on lost time with her son. Like I said, it's for the most part, pretty damn happy ending for a story that's been as dark as it is up to this point. And kind of being a little bit more familiar with some of the other things that Chip has written, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is about what I would expect from Chip. I think honestly it ended in the best way that it probably could, even with my little one minor grievance. But yeah, this was a fantastic story, and it was something that, while I love Chip Zdarsky, I am a huge fan of his work, I wasn't necessarily as interested in this one because, at least I think I talked about this before, I wasn't as initially interested in this story because not because I didn't think it would be bad, but just because out of a litany of hundreds of things that I read on a regular basis, it just wasn't something I was like, oh, another Avengers story. Because I didn't really even know a whole heap of lot about what it was even supposed to be. And then once I actually read that first issue, I was like, oh, wow, this is actually really cool. Why am I acting shocked? It's Chip Zdarsky. I was very happy with this. I'm very happy with this. And, when this comes out, to be collected, I will most certainly be picking up that hardcover because, like I said, I rocks with it. I love it when people write comics that don't pull any punches. This is a take no prisoners comic. This comic does not care whether or not it offends your sensibilities or lack thereof. And I think that that's a pretty cool thing. Despite how fantastical the situation is, it's very analogous to our real world. And I think that is something that can rub people the wrong way if maybe they feel a little too seen. But yeah, I thought this was great. If there's any one other criticism that I have of it is that while I'm glad that it came to a very satisfactory ending, like a more than satisfactory ending, I just wish there was more of it. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.